babies and the theology of death. This is the final boss of Parasite Eve. It's called Ultimate Being, and it emerges from the villain Eve during the climax of the game, appearing as a giant baby with cherub wings and an umbilical cord still attached. You fight this newborn character, you shoot it, you kill it. The game's ultimate evil is something just born. Over this series, we've examined how modern games make babies monstrous, how they turn mothers into horror, how they transform wombs into dungeons. But there's one final pattern we need to understand, the deepest inversion of all. When death becomes the source of life. When the natural order is completely reversed and creation itself is depicted as corruption. FreesFramed. Part 1. The Natural Order. In the beginning, there was creation, life from life. This is a fundamental pattern of existence. Parents produce children. Seeds grow into plants. Life begets life. Even at the cellular level, living cells divide to create more living cells. And throughout human history, this has been understood as sacred, the continuation of life, the passing of existence from one generation to the next. This is participation in the divine pattern of creation. Modern horror gaming has inverted this completely. In these games, death becomes the source of life. Corpses animate. Dead flesh spawns new creatures. The undead reproduce. This isn't just scary, this is theological corruption. Part 2. Dead Space's Necromorph Reproduction. Dead Space is explicit about its theology. Death is the beginning, not the end. The Necromorphs, the game's enemies, are reanimated corpses, but they don't just shamble around, they reproduce. Dead tissue transforms into new forms. Corpses merge and recombine to create entirely new creatures. The source of this transformation is the Marker, an alien artifact that the game's antagonists worship. And here's where it gets interesting. The Marker's followers call the transformation Convergence. They see it as evolution, as transcendence, as becoming something greater. Now, there is a legitimate principle of death and rebirth. Christ taught it. Quote, "Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." End quote. Lose your life to find it. Die to the carnal man to be born again spiritually. But notice the difference. That's spiritual death producing spiritual life. The old man dies so the new man can emerge. The natural man gives way to the spiritual. It's transformation through divine power, not corruption through material process. What are the Necromorphs? Physical death producing corrupted physical life. No resurrection, no redemption, no triumph over death. Just death itself becoming the source, masquerading as transcendence. This is the inversion, taking a sacred principle, death and rebirth through Christ, and twisting it into something purely material, purely grotesque. The game's antagonists worship death, similar to the way Christians worship Christ who brings about resurrection. But there's no resurrection in Dead Space, just reanimation, just corruption wearing the mask of transformation. And remember those lurkers and crawlers from episode 3? Necromorphs created from embryos and babies? Even the youngest, most innocent life must pass through death to become useful in this inverted theology. Part 3. Parasite Eve's birth through death. Parasite Eve takes this inversion and makes it literal. The villain, Eve, seeks to birth a new form of life, the ultimate being. But she can only do this by killing her host body first. The game's entire plot revolves around mitochondria, the organelles in our cells, gaining consciousness and turning against their human hosts. The mitochondria want to become dominant, but to do this, they must kill the organism they inhabit. Think about the symbolism here. Life at the cellular level, the very foundation of biological existence, is depicted as a parasite that must destroy its host to ascend. And the result? The giant baby boss with cherub wings, something that looks like new life, but is actually the product of death and corruption. The game forces you to kill this newborn abomination. The ultimate victory is preventing this birth, stopping new life from emerging. Part 4. The Theological Question. So why does this pattern appear across so many games? Why do developers repeatedly create scenarios where death is a source of life? I'd argue it reflects a deeper philosophical confusion about what life even is. In a materialist worldview, where consciousness is just chemical reactions, where there's no soul, no spirit, no divine spark, the line between life and death becomes blurry. If we're just animated meat, then why can't dead meat be reanimated? If there's no fundamental difference between living tissue and dead tissue beyond chemical processes, then life from death becomes theoretically possible. But this is a lie, and deep down these games know it. That's why Necromorphs are horrifying rather than triumphant. That's why Parasite Eve's ultimate being is monstrous rather than beautiful. The games themselves recoil from the implications of their own worldview. Because the truth is this: life cannot come from death. It never has, it never will. Part 5. The Alternative Framework. Contrast this with a theological understanding of life. In frameworks that recognize the reality of spirit, that understanding human beings are more than just animated flesh, life comes from life because life is fundamentally different from matter. A body without a spirit is just a corpse. It doesn't matter how much you shock it, reanimate it, or transform it. Without that divine spark, without that eternal intelligence entering mortality, there is no life, only the appearance of it. And this is why the natural process of birth is sacred. It's not just biology, it's not just cells dividing, it's the moment when a spirit enters a body, when internal intelligence takes on mortal form, when the divine and physical unite. You can't replicate that through death. You can't achieve it through corruption. The Necromorphs aren't alive in any meaningful sense. They're puppets of dead flesh. Parasite Eve's ultimate being isn't a new life form. It's an abomination that mimics life's appearance. The games themselves demonstrate this. These creatures are wrong. They violate the natural order, and players instinctively recognize this. That's why we're horrified by them. Part 6. The Pattern Complete. Let's connect the threads from this entire series. Episode 1, Babies Made Monstrous, the product of creation depicted as horror. Episode 2, Mothers Made Monstrous, the act of creation depicted as corruption. Episode 3, Wombs Made Dangerous, the space of creation depicted as hostile. And Episode 4, Death Made Creative, the inversion of creation itself. This is a comprehensive attack on the principle of creation. At every level, the product, the actor, the space, the process. Modern gaming depicts creation as something to fear, fight, and overcome. And it replaces creation with corruption, with death masquerading as life, with abomination pretending to be evolution. What worldview produces this? One that has lost connection with the sacred. One that sees existence itself as the problem. One that would rather have nothing than participate in the divine pattern of life begetting life. This is nihilism dressed up as entertainment, and millions consume it without questioning the philosophy underneath. So here's what I want you to understand after this entire series. These aren't just games. They aren't just entertainment. These are philosophical frameworks made interactive. When you spend 40 hours fighting baby monsters, killing pregnant bosses, navigating womb dungeons, and destroying reanimated corpses, you're not just playing. You're practicing a worldview. You're training yourself to associate creation with horror, to see new life as threat, to treat the continuation of humanity as something grotesque that must be conquered. And here's the question that should disturb you. What comes next? We're already seeing the effects. Birth rates collapsing across the developed world, young people increasingly identifying as anti-natalist, pregnancy depicted as disease in popular culture, motherhood portrayed as oppression. Gaming didn't cause all of this, but it reinforces it. It makes the horror of creation aesthetically compelling. It rewards you for conquering and destroying rather than protecting and nurturing. But there's an alternative. You can choose to recognize what's happening. You can refuse to participate in media that inverts the sacred. You can seek out stories that affirm life rather than mock it. Not every game does this. Not every story treats creation as corruption. There are games that understand sacrifice leads to redemption. Games where protecting the innocent matters. Games where family and legacy are treated as sacred rather than grotesque. The point isn't to abandon gaming entirely, it's to develop discernment, to recognize when you're being taught nihilism disguised as entertainment, to choose stories that elevate rather than corrupt. And you can create, you can tell stories, you can make art, you can participate in the actual divine pattern, not death producing mockery of life, but life producing life. Having children, raising families, building communities, creating beauty that affirms rather than destroys. That's a real victory over the nihilism these games preach, not just refusing to consume this poison, but actively choosing to participate in creation. We've spent 4 episodes examining darkness, freezing frames on horror, analyzing corruption. But the point was never to dwell in it. The point was to expose it, to make visible what was hidden, to name what was being taught. Now you know what to look for. You've seen the pattern. You understand the worldview. The question is, what will you choose? Choose creation. Choose life. Choose the sacred over the profane. What else are you not noticing? This concludes the When Games Fear Creation series. If these videos made you think, subscribe for more philosophical gaming analysis. Until next time, freeze the frame, find the truth.